Welcome to the latest edition of Don't Take This as Gospel. We are in Dennis Prager's The Rational Bible series, his first book, Exodus, God, Slavery, and Freedom. He's covering the second book of the Torah, which is the first 5 books of the Old Testament. Why is he covering the second book first? Because it contains the 10 Commandments. We're not to the 10 Commandments yet, though. We are still in the 10 plagues of the Exodus, and we are in chapter 10. Middle of chapter 10, where we start off with locusts invaded all the land of Egypt and settled within all the territory of Egypt in a thick mass. Never before had there been so many. They hid all the land from view, and they ate up all the grasses of the field and all the fruit of the trees, so that nothing green was left of tree or grass of the field in all the land of Egypt. And Pharaoh, the ruler of Egypt, hurriedly summoned Moses and Aaron and said, "I stand guilty before the Lord your God and before you." Now, what I found particularly interesting about this passage is not the passage itself so much as Dennis Prager's comment on it, which is, Pharaoh's statement that he sinned before Moses' God highlights a radical difference between biblical monotheism and other worldviews. Monotheists hold there is a single moral God of the universe before whom we can sin and can repent. Polytheists, such as Pharaoh, however, believed a person could sin before one God while doing nothing wrong in the eyes of another. Though Pharaoh recognizes he has sinned before Moses' God, he cannot be truly contrite and repent because he does not believe he has done anything objectively wrong. He doesn't believe in objective morality. He just thinks that he must have done something offensive in the eyes of Moses' God. Now, I find that particularly interesting because it does tap into something that a lot of people don't realize about objective morality. People tend to think about objective morality as if there is some sort of concrete rule book or innate, nature of the universe or something like that, natural law, sometimes people put it like, and they don't really connect the dots when people are talking about objective morality because they're so used to thinking that objective morality has to be something wholly other from subjective morality, but it really doesn't when you think about it. You know, when I in this job that I used to work for some chain of warehouses, and in the warehouses, I was told by this one guy, he says, whenever you go to a warehouse and you need to find out how they do things, you're looking for Fred. And I'm like, Fred? Who's Fred? And Fred, to him, was the guy who's been around forever, who knows how everything works. So if you really want to know, you can say that there's policies and procedures manual might tell you how the warehouse works, and the managers might be able to tell you how the warehouse works, but if you really want to know how that warehouse operates, you find Fred. You find out who their Fred is, and you ask Fred, because Fred is the one who really knows. So in a way, objective morality is kind of like finding Fred, because everybody has their own subjective morality. There's the way that they think things ought to be. If I take buying a porn subscription or something, if I thought that was right or wrong, then I'm going to either do it or not do it. But if I subscribe to a more higher view of right and wrong, say either, what would society think of me if I did this? Well, that's still kind of a form of subjective morality there. You're basically saying, okay, well, what will people think of me? What do the people around me think is right and wrong? And how do I stay on the right side of that? So that's another kind of larger form of subjective morality. Another form of subjective morality would be national. National morality would be, how do we do all that? Or what does the whole nation as a whole? Because you could definitely tell that different nations have different subjective moralities. I mean, think of what we allow people to do in the United States that they don't allow people to do in Saudi Arabia, especially women. So there's that view of subjective morality that's even up to the national level. And even if you put it all the way up to the world level and you took kind of a consensus of everybody in the world, assuming you could get everybody to kind of express their views and take a consensus of their subjective morality, you'd still have this kind of fluctuating thing because people are dying all the time and people are being born all the time. And so subjective morality is this ever-shifting thing that, may change even within a person from day to day. So subjective morality, very, very unstable thing. But that doesn't mean that it has absolutely no connection with the concept of objective morality, and I think Dennis Prager's argument highlights that very well, because what he basically says is Pharaoh thinks he's done wrong in the sight of Moses' God, but not necessarily in the sight of his gods. Okay, well, that kind of leads you to understand that if you want to care about objective morality, then the only morality you should care about is the subjective morality of this one God. And that's basically what objective morality is. But objective morality is the subjective morality of God. And just as you might subordinate your own personal morality to the subjective morality of the society around you on account of the consequences it could levy if you decided to violate that subjective morality, like, maybe you think that it's okay to have more than one wife, but society doesn't allow you to have more than one wife, and so you could go to jail for that. So you basically subordinate your own sense of right and wrong to society's sense of right and wrong. It's very, very similar in terms of objective morality. If you are talking about objective morality from a theistic point of view, you are basically taking your morality and subjecting it to the subjective morality of God. Now, what is it that makes the subjective morality of God something worth subjecting to? Well, there's the fact that God doesn't change. God's view of right and wrong, God being a constant being, as opposed to this inconstant mass of humanity in which we all live, and even according to our inconstant selves, God not being that can give you a constant sense of right and wrong. So if you look at the words of the Bible don't change. Yeah, so you have something of more bedrock value that you can stake your sense of right and wrong on than your internal feelings or general consensus of the populace at large, which is always changing. So there's the constancy of God, but even more important than the constancy of God is the authority of God. And I'm not talking about authority in a because I said so, parental authority kind of voice. I'm talking about the authority of God that comes from his having authored the entirety of creation. Now, being the author of creation means that God knows what creation is about. God's being the author of you means that God knows what you're about, or at least what you should be about, because obviously God allows you to do things that he doesn't want as well. So if you want to know what objective morality is, then you need to find the Fred of the universe, who is God. And let me give you an example in terms of authority, because I think this really illustrates it. I once got into an argument online with an author. He wrote a couple of comic book series about the same character, and one series seemed very self-contained and not really, didn't really attach itself to the main universe of titles in that comic book universe, and the other one did, and they were two vastly different series that the basis and origin of the character in this sense was different from the basis and origin of the character in the sense of the second volume. So I actually contacted the author at one time, and I had a conversation with him, and I said, I always wanted to ask you, I guess this first series was not really in continuity, and only the second series was. I mean, in continuity with the rest of that comic book universe, because in the first volume, the basis and origin of your character dealt with this, and then in this series, the basis and origin of your character dealt with that. And he said, oh no, it was the same in both. They're both in continuity. Yeah, it was the same basis in both series. The basis that you saw in the second volume was the basis that was in the first volume as well. And I started writing a reply saying, well, no, it's not, in the first volume, and then I realized I had no grounds upon which to argue with him, because he was the author of the story. I was just a reader. And so, yeah, I got something out of that story that maybe he didn't intend. But he knows what's in his story. He knows what he put there. The author has the authority to say what his story means. And I don't. So it's not a matter of, here's what I perceived it to be and here's what it felt like to me. The author knows what's in there. And the same thing goes for the moral code of the universe. The author of the universe knows what's in there. And so if you want to know what is the moral code of the universe, you're going to look for what the author of the universe has written about the universe that he created, if that's really what you're interested is in. And then you're going to subvert your own moral code and submit your own moral code to the scrutiny of that moral code and make adjustments to your moral code to match. Because just because it doesn't feel right or something feels wrong to you, it really doesn't mean anything. The God of the universe is the author of the universe, and it is the author of the universe who will tell you what he wrote down as the moral code of the universe. And that is objective morality. And so, yes, God's subjective morality is objective morality, but that subjective morality matters more than anyone else's, matters more than yours, matters more than the world's consensus, because God made the universe, and he knows what it's for. He knows what you're for, and so he knows what right and wrong should be for you. I'm Mike Partika. Thank you for listening to this latest installment of Don't Take This as Gospel. We will continue next time in Dennis Prager's The Rational Bible Exodus. If you'd like to pick a copy of the book, you can find the link in the video description, and I will talk with you later.